Broke billionaire, made a desperate deal with his cleaning. Lady love was not the plan. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, it is free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The house was too quiet for a place this large. Ethan Cole stood alone in the middle of what used to be his pride and joy. A 12,000-square-foot mansion in the hills outside Los Angeles. No music, no laughter, no voices from staff. Just the faint echo of his own breathing and the distant hum of traffic miles away. 3 months ago, this living room had been filled with people in tailored suits, champagne glasses clinking, conversations about stock prices and private jets. Tonight, there was only one couch left, a bare wooden table, and dust settling where expensive art once hung. Ethan Cole had been a billionaire. Not a quiet one, not a hidden one. His name had been on magazine covers. His face had been on billboards. His company had been worth billions of dollars. And now, it was gone. The lawsuits. The frozen accounts. The banks that stopped answering his calls. He ran a hand through his hair, slower than usual, as if even that small movement cost him energy now. On the table in front of him lay a single manila folder, thin, ordinary, almost insulting, considering how much power used to sit on his desk. Inside that folder was a contract, not for a merger, not for an acquisition, but for survival. Footsteps echoed softly from the hallway. Ethan did not turn around, but he knew who it was. He had memorized the sound over the past few weeks. Light steps, careful steps, the kind of steps taken by someone who did not want to be noticed. She had been coming twice a week to clean what little remained of the house. Not because he could still afford luxury, but because this place was scheduled to be sold, and it needed to look presentable for potential buyers. Her name was Lena. She was his cleaning lady. She stopped a few feet behind him, holding a simple cleaning cloth in one hand, a plastic spray bottle in the other. She hesitated, sensing something different in the air. "Mr. Cole?" she asked softly. Ethan exhaled. "Yes," he said. "You can come in." Lena stepped forward, eyes moving around the nearly empty room. She had cleaned homes like this before, but never one that felt so hollow. She had seen rich people, angry, distracted, arrogant. She had never seen one look this tired. "I will be quick today," she said, already moving toward the windows. "The realtor called earlier. They will come tomorrow morning." "I know," Ethan replied. He paused, then added, "Lena, sit down for a moment." She froze. Slowly, she turned toward him. "Is something wrong?" "No," he said. "Actually, everything is wrong." She did not sit immediately. People like Ethan Cole did not ask for favors. They gave orders. The fact that he was asking anything at all made her uneasy. Finally, she placed her supplies on the floor and sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded in her lap. Ethan picked up the manila folder. "I am going to ask you something," he said carefully, "and I want you to hear everything before you answer." Lena nodded, her expression guarded. "This is not about cleaning," he continued, "and it is not about money for chores." Her eyes flicked to the folder. "I need you," Ethan said, choosing his words with precision, "to play a role." "A role?" she repeated. He slid the folder across the table toward her. "I need you," he said, his voice steady but low, "to pretend to be my wife." The room seemed to shrink. Lena stared at him, certain she had misunderstood. "I am sorry," she said slowly. "I think I heard you wrong." "You did not," Ethan replied. He leaned back, shoulders heavy. "It would be temporary, a legal arrangement, a contract marriage," he said. "Nothing romantic, nothing personal, just appearances." Lena's heart began to pound. "Why me?" she asked. Ethan looked at her then, really looked at her. "Because I am out of options," he said, "and because you have nothing to gain from pretending you love me." She said nothing. The contract sat between them, unopened, and neither of them knew that this desperate deal, made in an empty mansion, was about to change both of their lives in ways no contract could ever control. Ethan did not rush her for an answer. He had learned over the last few months that pressure no longer worked the way it used to. When you lost everything, even time seemed to move differently. Lena finally spoke. "You want me to pretend to be your wife," she said, her voice calm but tight. "In public, for people who know who you are." "Yes," Ethan replied. "For investors. For the board. For a few very specific people who are deciding whether my company dies completely or survives." She looked down at the folder, but she did not open it yet. "I am not someone like you," she said quietly. "I clean houses for a living. I take the bus to work. I do not belong in your world." Ethan nodded. "That is exactly why this works." She frowned and looked up at him. "The remaining trustees controlling my assets," he continued, "believe I am unstable. They believe my recent losses made me reckless, alone, a risk." He paused, choosing honesty over pride. "There is a clause in the restructuring agreement. If I present a stable personal life, if I show continuity, responsibility, family commitment, they delay liquidation for 6 months. 6 months, Lena repeated. "Yes," he said. 6 months gives me time to finish one final deal. If it closes, I keep the company. If it does not, everything is gone anyway." Silence filled the room again. "And you think a wife fixes that?" she said. "A wife who looks sincere," Ethan replied. "Who is not paid to flatter me. Who does not come from my world." Ext, 2 thous. Lena let out a soft, humorless laugh. "You are asking me to lie for you. I am asking you to help me survive," he said. "And in return, I will help you survive too." That caught her attention. He slid the folder closer. "You told me once," Ethan said, "that your landlord raised the rent again." Her shoulders stiffened. She had not expected him to remember. "And that your mother's medical bills were behind," he added gently. "You said you were picking up extra jobs." "Is aid happened?" Lena's jaw tightened. "That is not your concern." "It becomes my concern if you accept this," he replied. She finally opened the folder. Inside were clean pages, simple language, clear numbers, a monthly payment that made her breath catch, enough to cover rent, enough to pay the hospital, enough to stop choosing between groceries and gas. "This is not charity," Ethan said quickly. "It is compensation for your time, your presence, your role." She flipped another page. Housing provided, transportation provided, a clear end date. "What happens after 6 months?" she asked. "We separate," Ethan said, quietly, cleanly, no scandal. "And if I say no?" she asked. Ethan did not hesitate. "Then I sell what little is left, and my company disappears." Lena closed the folder slowly. She stood and walked to the window, staring out at the city lights far below. Los Angeles looked the same as always, busy, bright, indifferent. She thought of her apartment. The notice taped to the door, the voicemail from the hospital billing office she had been avoiding. She turned back to him. "You said this was not romantic," she said. "I need to hear that clearly." "It is not," Ethan replied. "There will be rules." He leaned forward. "No touching for appearances only, no private expectations, no emotions. This is a contract, nothing more." Lena looked at the folder one last time. Then she met his eyes. "I am not doing this because you are a billionaire," she said. "You are not one anymore." A faint, bitter smile crossed his face. "I am doing this," she continued, "because I do not see another way out." She reached for the pen. "And you need to understand something, Ethan," she said as she signed her name. "I may be playing your wife, but I will not pretend to be less than I am." He nodded slowly. For the first time in months, Ethan Cole felt something shift. Not hope, but possibility. The pen felt heavier than it should have in Lena's hand. She had signed contracts before, work agreements, payment plans, documents she barely read because she had no leverage to negotiate anyway. But this one was different. This one did not just involve her time. It involved her identity. Ethan watched silently as she finished signing the last page. When she placed the pen down, neither of them spoke right away. The sound of the pen touching the table felt final. "It is done," Ethan said at last. Lena nodded, though her chest felt tight. "Then we need to be clear," she replied. "Because I am not good at pretending without rules." That makes two of us, he said. He opened the folder again, this time pulling out a single page labeled Boundaries. He slid it between them. These are non-negotiable, Ethan said. For both of us. She listened. First, he continued, this marriage exists only in public. In private, we are two people sharing space for a purpose. No sharing a bedroom, Lena said immediately. He nodded. Separate rooms, always. No touching unless cameras are present, she added. Agreed. No control over my personal choices, she said. I do not report where I go or who I speak to. Ethan did not argue. I will not monitor you. She paused, then added, and no using me to humiliate other people. He looked at her sharply. I would never. Good, she said, because I will walk away. There was a beat of silence. Then Ethan said, one more condition. From me. She waited. You will be honest when it matters, he said. If you cannot continue, you tell me. No disappearing. No public scenes. That is fair, Lena replied. He extended his hand. Not for romance. For agreement. She shook it once. Firm. Professional. Later that night, she stood in the doorway of the guest bedroom, a small suitcase at her feet. It was larger than her apartment living room. Clean, quiet, empty. This was where she would sleep now. She placed her suitcase on the bed and sat down slowly, absorbing the reality of it. She was living in the house of a man who used to control billions of dollars. A man who now needed her just to stand upright in front of the world. Down the hall, Ethan stood in his own room, staring at his reflection in the mirror. He barely recognized himself. Not because he looked poorer, but because for the first time in his life, everything depended on someone who had nothing to gain by lying to him. The next morning came fast. A black car waited in the driveway, a driver Ethan could barely still afford. A schedule printed neatly and placed on the kitchen counter. Lena stood there, holding a cup of coffee she had poured herself. What happens today? She asked. Ethan adjusted his jacket. Today, we introduce you. Everyone. To who? To people who will decide whether I still exist. She looked down at her simple dress, then back up at him. Then you better teach me how to walk into a room like I belong there. Ethan hesitated. Then he said quietly, you already do. And in that moment, neither of them realized that the hardest part of this contract would not be pretending in public. It would be remembering the rules, when the pretending started to feel real. The first week passed faster than Lena expected. It began with small things. A stylist arrived the next morning, polite but efficient, carrying garment bags that looked more expensive than everything Lena owned combined. She stood still while measurements were taken, fabric pinned, heels placed beside her feet. You do not need to change who you are, the woman said, adjusting a jacket on Lena's shoulders. You just need to let the room see you. Lena was not sure she believed that. Ethan watched from a distance, arms crossed, saying very little. He was used to people transforming themselves to fit his world. What unsettled him was how little Lena tried to impress anyone. She asked questions. She listened. She corrected people when they assumed too much. By the third day, a media consultant joined them at the dining table. Your story must be simple, the consultant explained. People trust what they can understand. Lena raised her hand slightly. What story? Ethan answered. We met after my father passed away. She was managing logistics for one of our properties. Lena looked at him. That sounds like a lie you practiced. He met her gaze. Do you have a better version? Yes, she said calmly. We met when you were already falling apart. The consultant froze. Ethan inhaled slowly. She helped me keep things together, he said carefully. That part is true, Lena replied. They practiced how to enter a room together. Where to stand, when to speak, when to remain silent. At first, Lena felt like she was learning choreography, every movement measured, every smile timed. But something unexpected happened. She was good at it, not because she memorized rules, but because she watched people. She noticed when someone felt ignored, when someone tried to dominate the conversation, when silence carried more weight than words. At one rehearsal, Ethan stopped her. You should not have interrupted him, he said. That investor does not like to be corrected. Lena turned to him. He was insulting you. Ethan paused. No one had defended him in months. He was testing you, she continued, and you failed by staying quiet. The next time they rehearsed, Ethan let her speak, and the room shifted. The night of the first public appearance arrived sooner than either of them wanted. A charity reception downtown. 100 people, cameras, familiar faces who remembered Ethan when he was untouchable. Lena stood in the bedroom mirror, adjusting the sleeve of her dress. She did not look like a cleaning lady. She did not look like a trophy wife either. She looked like herself, just sharper. Ethan appeared in the doorway. "You can still walk away," he said. She turned toward him. "And you would lose everything, and it quickly." "Yes." She studied his face. For a moment, she wondered if he was asking permission to fail. "I'm not walking away," she said. "But you need to remember something." "Mine. Note." "What?" "I am not here to save you," she said. "I am here to stand beside you." He nodded. When they entered the reception together, conversations slowed. People stared, some with curiosity, some with disbelief, some with judgment. "Ethan," a man said loudly, "we heard you disappeared." "I took time," Ethan replied. "And found yourself a wife," another voice added. Lena smiled before Ethan could respond. "I found him first," she said, extending her hand. "Lena Cole, 200 disses." The lie felt strange on her tongue, but it held. As the night went on, questions came, probing, polite, sharp. "Where did you meet? How long have you known each other? Why now?" Lena answered without rushing, without apologizing. And for the first time in months, Ethan watched people listen to him again. Not because of his money, but because someone stood with him. Late that night, back in the quiet house, Lena removed her heels and sat on the stairs. "That went better than expected," she said. Ethan leaned against the wall. "You were incredible." She looked at him. "Do not get used to it." He smiled faintly. Too late. And somewhere between the contract on the table and the silence of the house, the lines they had drawn began to blur. The next test came without warning. 3 days after the charity reception, Ethan received a call that made his shoulders tense the moment he ended it. "The board is calling an informal dinner," he said, setting his phone down. "No press, no charity cover, just them." Lena looked up from the kitchen table. "That sounds worse." "It is," he admitted. "They want to see how real this is when there are no cameras to behave for." She nodded slowly. "Then they are not testing you," she said. "They are testing me." That night, the atmosphere was different from the reception. No music, no polite applause. Just a long table, expensive wine, and eyes that had seen Ethan rise and fall. Lena felt it the moment they walked in. The pauses, the subtle glances, the way conversation stopped just long enough to measure her. One of the men leaned back in his chair and smiled thinly. "So you are the wife?" "Yes," Lena replied evenly. "And before that," another asked, "what exactly did you do?" She did not look at Ethan before answering. "I worked," she said. "Hard." A few people chuckled. "That is admirable," a woman said. "But this is not exactly a working-class situation." Lena felt the insult land. Clean. Sharp. Ethan shifted beside her, ready to intervene. She placed her hand lightly on his arm. "I understand what you are asking," Lena said, her voice calm. "You want to know if I belong here." Silence followed. "I do not," she continued. "Not by your standards. I was not born into this. I did not inherit it. I did not buy my way in." She met their eyes one by one. "I am here because when everything fell apart, I stayed." The man at the head of the table tilted his head. "That is not how business works." "No," Lena replied, "but that is how trust works." The dinner moved on, but the tension did not leave. Later, dessert arrived, and with it came the real strike. "We have concerns," one of the board members said openly. "Concerns about appearances, about influence." Another added, "and about motivations." He looked directly at Lena. "How much is this arrangement worth to you?" The room went quiet. Ethan opened his mouth. Lena spoke first. "You think I am here for money," she said, "and you are right." A few eyebrows rose. "I needed stability," she continued. "I needed safety. And yes, he offered that." She turned slightly toward Ethan, then back to the table. But you are wrong if you think I am disposable. The word hung in the air. If this company survives, she said, it will not be because I smiled correctly or wore the right dress. It will be because someone remembered that leadership does not come from fear. She stood. I am done answering questions that assume I am a transaction. Ethan stood with her. The drive home was silent. When they entered the house, Lena stopped near the stairs. That was risky, Ethan said quietly. Yes, she replied, but it was necessary. He looked at her. They might retaliate. She met his gaze. Then let them. For the first time, Ethan realized something uncomfortable. She was no longer protecting the contract. She was protecting him, and that realization frightened him more than any board meeting ever had. The days after the board dinner felt heavier, not because anything had gone wrong on paper. In fact, the opposite happened. Ethan received fewer hostile calls. The emails slowed. The pressure paused, just enough to make him uneasy. Lena noticed the change before he said anything. He stopped pacing when he spoke on the phone. He slept a little longer. He forgot to lock his door at night. One evening, she found him on the back terrace, sitting alone with a glass of water, staring out at the city lights. You are avoiding your room, she said, stepping outside. He did not turn. I did not realize it was noticeable. It is, she replied. You only do that when your head is loud. He gave a quiet laugh. You are very observant for someone who was not supposed to notice anything. She leaned against the railing, keeping a careful distance. The board dinner, Ethan said after a moment. They crossed a line. They were always going to, Lena replied. People like that do not lose power quietly. He nodded. You did not have to defend me. Yes, she said. I did. He looked at her then. Why? The question was simple. The answer was not. Lena thought for a moment. Because I recognized something, she said. The way they spoke to you. It was the same way landlords talk when they think you are desperate, like you stop being a person. Ethan swallowed. I built my entire life making sure that never happened to me, he said. And the moment the money disappeared, so did the respect. She did not interrupt. I used to believe love was leverage, he continued. Marriage, image, appearances, tools. I never thought about what it would feel like to be chosen. The word hung between them. This is not real, he added quickly. I know that. Lena turned to face him fully. Then why does it feel real to you? He had no answer. Later that night, the power went out. It was sudden. The lights flickered once, then the house fell into darkness. Lena froze in the hallway. That never happens here. Ethan emerged from his room with a flashlight. Storm knocked out the line. Inda. They stood there, the silence louder than before. There are candles in the kitchen, Lena said. They lit a few and placed them on the table. The flickering light softened the sharp edges of the room. For the first time, the house felt almost lived in. They sat across from each other, not touching, just breathing in the quiet. You know, Lena said, this was supposed to be simple. Yes, Ethan replied. It was supposed to be controlled. Wiles, Ivikazit. And instead, she continued, we keep forgetting the rules. He looked down at his hands. I am trying not to. So am I, she admitted. The wind rattled the windows. Tell me something, Ethan said. Something true, not part of the story. Lena hesitated, then spoke. I am afraid this will end, she said. Not because I will miss the money, but because I will go back to being invisible. Ethan felt the words hit deeper than he expected. You are not invisible, he said. She smiled faintly. You see me. That is different. He stood slowly, then stopped himself, remembering the rules. I do not know how to do this, he said. I do not know how to feel without turning it into a transaction. Lena met his eyes. Then do not turn it into anything, she said. Just sit with it. They stayed there until the power came back. When the lights returned, the moment broke. They both stepped back. Good night, Lena said softly. Good night, Ethan replied. As she walked away, Ethan realized something he had not planned for, not written into any contract. The most dangerous part of this arrangement was no longer the board. It was the fact that he did not want it to end. The blow came the following morning, not from the board, not from the media. It came from Daniel Wright. Ethan recognized the name the moment it appeared on his phone. Former chief financial officer. The man who had left 6 months before the collapse, walking away with clean hands while the rest of the company burned. Daniel did not call often. When he did, it meant leverage. Ethan answered. "You should turn on the news," Daniel said calmly, "before someone else sends it to you." The line went dead. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, then grabbed the remote. The television flickered on to a financial news segment. His name appeared at the bottom of the screen. Former billionaire's marriage under scrutiny. A photograph filled the screen. Ethan and Lena entering the charity reception. Another followed. Them leaving the board dinner. Close, intimate, framed perfectly. The reporter's voice was smooth, too smooth. Sources close to the company suggest the marriage may be contractual, designed to manipulate investor confidence. Ethan felt the room tilt. Footsteps rushed down the stairs. Lena stopped when she saw the screen. "Oh," she said quietly. Ethan turned to her. "I did not tell anyone." "I know," she replied. Her face had gone still. Not shocked, not angry. Guarded. The phone buzzed again. This time, Daniel Wright did not hide. "I warned you," Daniel said when Ethan answered. "You should have stayed down." "What do you want?" Ethan demanded. "To finish what we started," Daniel replied. "The board is meeting tonight. Emergency session. They will void the extension clause." Ethan's stomach dropped. Unless, Daniel continued, "you remove the liability." Ethan looked at Lena. "She walks away," Daniel said plainly. "Publicly. Today. Admits it was a mistake. A misunderstanding. That destroys her," Ethan said. Daniel laughed softly. "You think they care? She was always collateral." The call ended. The house was silent again. Lena spoke first. "So this is it." "No," Ethan said quickly. "We will fight this." "With what?" she asked. "Your reputation? That is what they are burning." He ran a hand through his hair. "I will tell them the truth." She shook her head. "That makes it worse." He stepped toward her. "I will not let them use you." "They already are," she replied. Lena walked to the table and picked up the contract. The same folder, the same pages. "This is what they see," she said. "A transaction, and the fastest way to protect the company is to erase me from it." Ethan felt panic rise. "That is not acceptable." She met his eyes. "It is not your choice alone anymore." A knock echoed at the door. Lena flinched. Ethan opened it to find a delivery envelope. Inside was a printed article draft, headline ready, quotes prepared, and at the bottom, a single line handwritten in ink. "Choose the company. Or choose her." Lena exhaled slowly. "I think you already know what they expect you to do," she said. Ethan looked at her, the weight of the contract suddenly unbearable. For the first time since this began, the deal demanded its price, and it was higher than either of them had planned to pay. The emergency board meeting was held that evening. No press inside the room, no cameras, just 12 people seated around a polished table, each of them holding Ethan's future in their hands. Lena waited outside. She sat alone in a quiet corridor, hands folded tightly in her lap. The contract was in her bag. She had read it again while waiting. Every clause, every exit condition. She already knew how this ended. Inside the room, Daniel Wright spoke first. "We need to address the liability," he said calmly. "The market is reacting. Investors are nervous. This marriage has become a distraction." Ethan listened without interrupting. "We propose a clean solution," Daniel continued. "Mr. Cole publicly acknowledges poor judgment. The marriage dissolves. The board restores confidence." A few heads nodded. "Your silence is concerning," Daniel added. "Do you disagree?" Ethan stood. He did not raise his voice. He did not pace. "I disagree with everything," he said. The room stilled. "This marriage did not begin as a love story," Ethan continued. "It began as a mistake, a desperate one." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then admit it." "I will," Ethan replied, "but not the way you want." He placed a folder on the table. "Not the contract. A different document." "When my father died," Ethan said, "I inherited money, influence, a company that rewarded fear. I mistook control for leadership." Several board members shifted. When the collapse came, he continued, everyone here measured my worth in numbers. Except one person. One the person? He looked directly at Daniel. You want to erase her because she reminds you that loyalty cannot be bought. Daniel scoffed. This is emotional manipulation. No, Ethan replied. This is accountability. He took a breath. I entered this arrangement to protect my company. Somewhere along the way, I realized the company was no longer worth protecting if it required sacrificing someone else. A murmur rippled through the room. I am withdrawing my request for extension, Ethan said, effective immediately. Daniel's eyes widened. You are ending your own chance. Yes, Ethan said, but I am ending it on my terms. The meeting ended abruptly. Ethan walked out without waiting for approval. Lena stood when she saw him. It is done, she said softly. Yes, he replied. She searched his face. Which version? He reached into his jacket and pulled out the contract. Then, without ceremony, he tore it in half. Once, twice. He dropped the pieces into the trash. I chose wrong at the beginning, he said. I am choosing differently now. Lena's breath caught. You do not owe me this. I owe myself this, he replied. And I owe you the truth. She stepped closer. And what happens now? That is up to you, Ethan said. There is no deal anymore, no protection, no guarantees. Silence stretched between them. Lena picked up her bag. I stayed because I believed you could change, she said, not because I needed saving. She paused, then looked at him. I am not leaving tonight, she said, but this time it is my choice. Ethan nodded. For the first time since this began, nothing bound them together except honesty, and somehow that felt stronger than any contract ever had. The house did not change overnight. The walls were still bare. The furniture was still minimal. The future was still uncertain. But the air felt different. In the weeks that followed, Ethan stopped chasing the version of himself that no longer existed. The company downsized. Projects were cut. The name lost its shine, but it survived. Smaller, quieter, honest. Lena did not move out. Not because she was staying out of obligation. Not because she was waiting for something in return. She stayed because, for the first time in a long while, the space felt like it belonged to two people instead of one man hiding from failure. One evening, Ethan found her in the kitchen, scrubbing a pan that did not need scrubbing. You do not have to do that, he said. She looked up. Old habits. He nodded. I have those too. He placed a small envelope on the counter between them. What is this? She asked. A new offer, he replied. Not a contract. She raised an eyebrow but opened it. Inside was a single page. No legal language, no clauses. Just a proposal. A partnership. Equal pay. Shared decision-making. Her name listed next to his. This is not charity, he said before she could speak. And it is not repayment, it is an invitation. To what? She asked. To build something that does not require pretending, he replied. With me or without me. Your choice. Intexated, she studied the page for a long moment. Then she folded it and slid it back toward him. I will accept, she said, but not like this. He frowned. Then how? She reached into a drawer and pulled out the old pen, the same one she had used to sign the first contract. She placed it on the table between them. No papers tonight, she said. If we do this, we do it slowly. No roles, no image. Trank Spicter. Ethan smiled. I can do slow. Time passed. There were no grand announcements. No headlines. No dramatic redemption arc. Just mornings where they shared coffee. Evenings where silence felt comfortable instead of heavy. 1 year later, the house looked different. Not larger. Not more expensive. Just lived in. A photo frame sat on the shelf. Not from a gala. Not from a boardroom. Just the two of them on the back terrace, laughing at something that no longer mattered. Ethan stood there one evening, watching Lena water the plants she insisted on keeping alive. You know, he said, this started as the worst decision of my life. She smiled without looking at him. And it became the best one, he finished. She turned toward him then. Not because you lost everything, she said, but because you stopped believing love had to be negotiated. He stepped closer. Not hurried, not hesitant. No contracts, he said quietly. No contracts, she agreed. They stood there as the city lights flickered on in the distance. The billionaire who once measured his worth in numbers had learned something far more valuable. And the woman who was hired to play a role had rewritten the ending, not as part of a deal, but as a choice.